It's been a crazy ride towards impeachment. Larry, you predicted it months ago, maybe a year ago. It's not here yet, but they're marching towards it. How are you tonight, Larry?
Doing well, Jason. Thank you.
It's good to see you as usual. I think people are somewhat confused by what's been going on. It seems to defy all constitutional law and logic. What can you tell us about this pending impeachment?
We know there's no law anymore, Jason. Law is what the Democrats and Republicans want it to be, which is no law at all, frankly. Yeah. And, while the Democrats are worse than the Republicans, in my opinion, they're a problem too. And that's the basis of the satire that you put forth advertising this show at the beginning. And that is that both political parties would like to see the president, figuratively speaking, dead. They really would. From day one, the Republican establishment wanted Trump out. He threatened their money train. He threatened their power. We see them coming forward now, particularly Mitt Romney, who would like to be the heir apparent if Trump is impeached and then convicted in the Senate. And, of course, the Democrats want him out as well because they think they're going to have a shot in winning this election. And people like Bernie Sanders have made it clear they want to completely refashion the nature of this country. They want to destroy it and build it up in their socialist, atheist, radical agenda and their image. And that's what the fight is right now. Now, what I think it would be good to talk about is what are the chances here for impeachment? I think they're 100% certain. The Democrats are going to do it. They'll probably drag it out for a while, so they'll take it right up to the point close to the elections, months before the elections, and then they'll do it. And they figure if in fact they do impeach the president, the same thing will happen. It'll be the same effect as when Clinton was impeached. It weakened Al Gore, and it gave the presidency to that idiot, George W. Bush, which was the only way the guy could have possibly won, Right. Like I said before, his crowning moment was when he dodged the shoe and back. And, of course, we're paying the price for all the things that he did even today. Yeah. But that's their theory. But, see, the real risk here is that when this matter goes over to the U.S. Senate, that there will be enough Republicans to convict the president. And the president has to be careful. He needs to be distinguished at this point. He has to stop flailing about. You can say things straight up because it's true. This is an attempt to legally, and I don't mean this actually, but it's an attempt to legally assassinate the president, much like Brutus did to Caesar. And the Republicans would like him out as well. So that's where I see this going. And frankly, there was no reason. I love the president, and if he goes down, the country goes down, the future of our kids and grandchildren goes down. But the reality is it was the most stupid thing after the Russian collusion investigation to send Rudy Giuliani, who was doing high fives as the hero. Of course, he wasn't any real hero with regard to Mueller, over to the Ukraine to allegedly try to convince the Ukrainian government to investigate the Democrats and Biden and his son. Because, this could have been done on this side of the Atlantic. It should have been done by our Justice Department, our so-called Justice Department. And, of course, today, Freedom Watch is your Justice Department, not the Justice Department. Look at just in the last few months, and I've said this before, Bill Barr, the Attorney General, had a perfect opportunity, teed up by an Obama-appointed Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, to indict James Comey. He passed on 2 occasions. In addition, what happened to the indictment of Andrew McCabe? If this was so clear-cut, where is that? And, of course, we know of other things that this Attorney General is allowed to happen. He's allowed for the Bundys to continue to be politically persecuted, my clients and others. And the Bundys now are fighting for their lives at the Ninth Circuit because the dismissal of their indictment was appealed by the Trump Justice Department right under the noses of Barr. I wrote Barr a letter. I wrote the Solicitor General of the Justice Department a letter. I wrote the head of the criminal division. I said, end this agony. Klayman is in his mid-70s. Why are you harassing this man? An Obama-appointed judge threw this thing out. Why are you allowing for the U.S. Attorney in Nevada to take this appeal, who's trying to cover his derriere, its derriere, because of the gross prosecutorial abuse. They're hoping that the Ninth Circuit will let them off the hook. Otherwise, they could potentially be disciplined. They'll never be prosecuted.
Did they write back to this letter, Larry?
Never wrote back. Not even the courtesy of that.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. We have no Justice Department, you see. And consequently, but that Justice Department could have done the investigation of the Bidens. Didn't have to be done by the president and Giuliani. Didn't have to be even discussed with the president of the Ukraine, Zelensky, not to be confused with Aaron Zelensky, who was a Mueller prosecutor, although they're both from the Ukraine. Zelensky's grandparents were from there, Aaron. And this is, where we stand today. The country is lawless. The country has no Justice Department. And other than what we're doing at Freedom Watch, we're doing more than getting documents like my former group. We're trying to bring hard-hitting cases, but then we run into these very politicized judges that are part of the establishment, and they'd like to see Trump gone too. I think even probably most of the judges he's appointed would like to see him gone. They've got life tenure. These are establishment Republican judges. And I have found that most of them lack the courage to do what needs to be done. But on the other side of the coin, the president was right yesterday when he said, look at the Democrats, they're vicious. But the Republicans, they just kind of roll over, they go on Fox News, they get on Hannity, they get on Tucker Carlson, they get on Laura Ingraham. Of course, the rest of Fox has moved far left, and they are never Trumpers as well, as Rush has said. It's become the never Trumper Fox News. But where are the Republicans pushing back? And I did happen, perchance, to turn on Tucker Carlson last night, and he said something I agree with. Where's Lindsey Graham, that blowhard who's now the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee? Where is he? He promised to look into the FISA abuse. He promised to look into the Steele dossier. Of course, he was the one that gave the Steele dossier to McCain, who then gave it to the FBI. He must have gotten it from the Democrats. So it tells you where he's coming from. He is a true Brutus because he tries to pretend that he's friends with the president, but he's poised to also figuratively stab the president in the back. He'd like to run for president.
But Larry,
he has no chance.
President Trump is not stupid, particularly not when it comes to reading people like this. He's got to know that Lindsey Graham was never his friend or ally, right?
I would hope so, but the president, regrettably, is easily flattered. And he has these court jesters around him. I mean, look at Mulvaney, the chief of staff. I mean, is this guy a moron? I mean, is he a moron, or did he do it on purpose? I would suggest he did it on purpose, claiming that there was a quid pro quo with the Ukraine. We know what he said. I mean, is anybody that stupid if it isn't intentional? I mean, in fact, being reckless and grossly negligent rises the level of intentional. So the president is surrounded by people that want to take him down, and that's why you need to support Freedom Watch, because we're doing everything we can to try to save this president, and you need to yourself rise up. Like I said, get off the couch, put the popcorn down, put the beer down, and get involved, because this is a fight for the survival of the country, and the president is on the ropes. Things do not look good. I don't care what they say. They don't look good.
Yeah. And I love it how you use this tagline, you asked for it, you got it, Toyota. I think it's an 80s ad campaign, but it is memorable. And when people ask for it, they get it from Freedom Watch.
Well, I use that sometimes. I use that because last week we sued Joe Biden and his son for tortiously interfering with my YouTube account, because when I did a YouTube and posted it on the internet for Radio America, and I've said it on your show too, is that we're going to reconvene our citizens' grand jury. We're going to seek the indictment of Biden and his son for bribery and corruption in the Ukraine. And no sooner than that, almost immediately, I got a notice that I had engaged in hate speech, right? Saying that we're going to invoke the law, and they yanked every YouTube I've ever done off their site, going back years and years. So what I did was, Jason, and this is the only way you can deal with these people, with strength. I called up and I sent an email to Williams and Conley, the Clinton's law firm, not coincidentally. Also
they
law firm in
represent YouTube.
Yeah, they represent Google, YouTube in our antitrust case. And I told that lawyer, I said, either you tell your client to put it back by noon tomorrow, or I'm going to sue Google, YouTube, along with the Bidens, as part of a collusion, a conspiracy to harm Larry Klayman, and and Freedom Watch. And I sued them in my personal capacity because it destroys my reputation and goodwill. It makes me look like I did something wrong to pull it off of YouTube, even for 2 days. So I sued them in my personal capacity. And see, that's what we patriots need to do peacefully and legally. We cannot be afraid. And, whether there's blowback or not on me for doing that, I'm going to do what I think's right. I'm going to stick my neck out for this country. I've done it before. Sometimes I've done it with clients that didn't appreciate what I did. Most of my clients appreciated deeply for what I did. I represented some people of questionable character in the past, but I did it for the country. Not the Bundys, not anybody I'm currently representing.
Right.
But this is what it's about, and this is what the American people need to do peacefully and legally now. Stop with the titillation on Sean Hannity and get to work and do something. Either, volunteer for Freedom Watch. You can reach me at leklayman@gmail.com. Or donate to our cause because we're way too small. We need to get bigger at freedomwatchusa.org, or support our clients like Clive and Bundy at cliveandbundydefensefund.org or CorseyLegalDefenseFund.com. I'm going to be at the Roger Stone trial in a few weeks for Dr. Corsi. He's, person number one in the indictment of Stone. I want to monitor what's going on there. And these are the kinds of things that our clients need support for, because the establishment in Washington, the deep state on both sides of the political aisle, is corrupt, it's evil, and even the good ones, like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan. I mean, they're good people, okay? I've talked to Mark Meadows several times. He's a nice person from North Carolina, where I went to school at Duke, But these people can't do anything. All they can do is go on Fox News. They have no power, nothing. And the rest of them march on. And from day one, they wanted to see the president gone as well. They were happy to let the Democrats do it for them. But now they're joining in. And
Meadows
you can see,
and Jordan are?
No, not them. But I'm saying that many of the others, particularly in the Senate, people like Romney, who's just a really hateful individual. Romney is poised. He thinks he's going to be the nominee in 2020 of the Republican Party. That's why he's going after the president. He smells blood in the water.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that, Larry. But, it does. I can't get this image out of my mind when Mitt Romney was gunning for the Secretary of State position and he's hanging out having, I don't know, what is it, puff pastries or shrimp or something, crab cakes with the president. He looks so uncomfortable and Trump looks ready to pounce. I guess Mitt Romney is sort of keeping his powder dry over his anger at not becoming Secretary of State. The other thing I wanted to point out, Larry, is that,
first of all, Jason, he wants to be president. He wants to get rid of Trump. But you know what? At least in his deceit, in his two-faced dishonesty, he's at least direct. He says he's clear what he wants, is that these others are slithering around in the back of the president, ready to slip the knife in.
Yeah.
And they'd like him gone too. Lindsey Graham would like the president gone, no matter whatever act he puts on.
Absolutely.
On Fox News.
And one brief thing I want to add, Larry. First of all, congratulations on dealing with YouTube. Very difficult for the average YouTuber who is not a super lawyer like yourself. But for people who are watching right now, they can also tune into a simulcast of this broadcast on Freedom Watch's newly restored YouTube channel. So good job in doing that, Larry. And hello to everyone who's watching us on Freedom Watch.
And if you want to watch the complaint, not watch, but view the complaint I filed against the Bidens, go to freedomwatchusa.org and larryklayman.com. It's a very simple complaint, and I filed it in Florida because in Florida that's a trial lawyer's state. Cases tend to go forward, where in Washington, D.C., they frequently get bogged down or dismissed by politicized judges. So if you ever want to bring a case, if possible, don't bring it in Washington, D.C., the capital of corruption.
Well, you've got so many cases going, Larry. What can you tell us? Are there any updates on any of these other cases? I know you're dealing with Judge Moore, Sheriff Arpaio, Laura Loomer, all the people that conservative-minded viewers are interested in knowing about.
Well, tomorrow there's an oral argument at the Ninth Circuit because Sheriff Arpaio initially asked to order that his misdemeanor, not felony conviction, be set aside. Now, in response, a lot of very hateful leftists came in with amicus briefs, as friend of the court, arguing that, in fact, the pardon should be nullified, that Judge Arpaio, that it should be sent back to Arizona to these very partisan Clinton and Obama appointees to, in effect, have him sentenced to prison. Okay? And one of those people is someone I have had experience with, Michael Tiger. He sat on a disciplinary hearing with me in the District of Columbia, where the bar, obviously doesn't like the fact that I'm conservative. People who run the bar donate heavily to Hillary Clinton and the other Democrats. He sat there on that committee at the same time that he was filing ethics complaints against Kellyanne Conway for things she said on MSNBC and Fox News. Kellyanne is not even an active lawyer. She let her law license in D.C. Go inactive to do other things. And then he winds up filing an amicus brief, friend of the court brief, at the Ninth Circuit, arguing that the pardon be nullified. What makes matters worse is that he knew, or should have known, that I represent Sheriff Arpaio. And then he was sitting on a disciplinary case, which I claim is frivolous, and which the bar basically is trying to remove me from the practice of law. Well, that's not going to happen because Larry Klayman does not roll over, no more than the president does.
Yeah.
But this is a reality of the world we live in today. And how this guy could come in and oppose mine, which I've been representing for a long time, and he also represent him at the same time, do this stuff with Kellyanne Conway, signed a complaint with 15 other liberal law professors, and then publicize, not even supposed to publicize disciplinary complaints until the very end of it. The ruling, this is the world we live in today. And that's why we need to stand up for ourselves. That's why I admire the president for standing up for himself. But he needs to get better people around him. And Rudy Giuliani made a huge mess. And, he may be a nice guy and everything, but remember, one of his former associates, Bernie Kerik, wound up getting indicted and convicted. Now, two current associates, apparently, dealing with the Ukraine, were indicted. And now he's under investigation. And the president needs, to put Rudy on ice right now, get himself some real legal help. And Jay Sekulow is a nice guy, too. I like him. He does good work in the religious rights area, but he's not a criminal defense lawyer. The president really needs some high-powered criminal defense lawyers at this point, and also people who believe in him. Let me say this, Jason, too. I was watching some videos last weekend of Jerry Spence. I don't know if you remember him, and I urge people to call him up on YouTube. Jerry Spence is one of the finest criminal defense lawyers and trial lawyers of the modern age, kind of like Clarence Darrow, in the old times. And Spence is not like me. He's a leftist, okay? He's kind of like Ramsey Clark, who I was also friends with. The left and the right have a lot in common sometimes, okay, because they don't like oppressive government power, okay, particularly if you're a criminal defense lawyer. And Spence, in his videos, points out how you have to believe in your client. People asked him, he said, how could you ever defend a rapist, for instance? And he said, well, you know what? You may have grown up in a good environment, with wealthy parents and going to good schools and this kind of thing, but there are other people who grow up in another environment. And while I don't condone rape, under these circumstances, he certainly deserves a defense, and we'll see what we can get for him, the best we can get for him. And what he said is the first most important thing of any lawyer is to believe in your client. And the second most important thing is to convey a story to the jury which makes sense. And this is why another leftist attorney, Johnny Cochran, was such a great trial lawyer, too. You remember, O.J. was guilty of sin, but the glove don't fit, you must acquit, right?
Right.
The pieces fit. The pieces fit, okay? The president needs lawyers like that. And he needs to stop hiring people off of Fox News. Maybe he's not doing it anymore, given the fact that Fox News has turned against him. Yeah. But, that's how he winds up with most of the people around him. And those people are in it for themselves. They're not in it for for the president, or for that matter, the country. They're raking in money hand over fist with consulting agreements with Fox and everything else. And frankly, they don't know what the heck they're doing in a very professional way. He needs somebody like Jerry Spence. Now, Jerry's 90 years old, okay, so I don't know that he's able right now, but you got to find somebody. I don't care if you're left or right. There are honest people on the left. Not many.
What about you, Larry? How come you can't defend the president?
Well, my theory is that Roger Stone poisoned the well with him, years ago.
Got it.
And, I had issues with Roger. He was my campaign manager for 2 weeks before we went our own way. He brought all of his miscreants in with my campaign. I wound up losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I had represented him before. And then he doesn't like Corsi. He thought Corsi was going to testify against him in this trial. Corsi said if he ever testified, if he was ever subpoenaed, he'd tell the truth. And so he went after Corsi, went after me. And I've got lawsuits. There's 4 lawsuits pending against Roger Stone.
Wow.
For Corsi and for me. And, I'm not going to talk about the criminal trial, but I can tell you what he did with me. Roger Stone's not a nice person. He's not what he appears to be. And, and when somebody wrongs you, you have to fight back.
Yeah.
So I think he poisoned the well with Trump. That's my feeling, or maybe Fitton, the Judicial Watch, did it. I don't know. But in any event, it doesn't have to be Larry Klayman. I have a good friend, Gillen, one of the top criminal defense lawyers in the country. There are others out there, too, who are excellent. And the president needs to bring in real lawyers right now.
Yeah. So Giuliani basically, give us some clarity on that, because it's very confusing for people. We see these things about his associates being arrested, and frankly, for me, my first thought is that it's just the Justice Department, trying to slam Giuliani. But it sounds like you're saying he's in some real legal jeopardy.
Yeah, well, he is, and maybe nothing will happen in the end. Maybe the president will pardon him, but it wasn't exactly rocket science to go over to the Ukraine and allegedly try to convince the Ukrainians to investigate the Bidens and the Democratic Party. Not after you were cleared in the Russian collusion matter.
But was he trying to convince them to investigate the Bidens, or was he just imploring a president to investigate international corruption as he should?
I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing, but the thing is, they handed it to the Democrats. They handed it to them. And there are people, who previously supported the president, who, I come in contact with them, who are not so sure anymore, or who are going the other way.
Wow.
And it was just a dumb thing to do after you got clear of the Russian collusion investigation. Look, Joe Biden will never be president. The guy, he's got so many health issues. He can't even put a sentence together. He probably won't even make it to the end of the primaries. I don't wish him any harm, physically, but I think the guy's going to wind up with a stroke, and frankly, he's a clown, and he's probably the dumbest person to run for president since George W. Bush.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be president. So why go after him? It's like Nixon going after McGovern back, in 1972. Okay, McGovern was 30 points down. What was the need to break into the Democratic National Committee?
Well, I think most Crowdsource the Truth, sorry to interrupt you, Larry, but I think most Crowdsource the Truth viewers would argue that they weren't actually breaking in to do anything relative to George McGovern. They were looking for files related to the JFK assassination, and the McGovern story was just a cover for what Nixon was trying to do to gain leverage over the CIA.
I'll tell you a funny story. First of all, except for Watergate, I like Nixon. Okay, I like the fact that he was anti-establishment, and a statement that he made once, he said, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. We all have enough brain cells to succeed, But there was a funny story, because when I was going to Duke as an undergrad, I read a story in the Duke Chronicle, the student newspaper, that Nixon was a recluse. He lived off campus in what is now the Duke Golf Course in the woods. He lived in a shack. He wasn't wealthy. He had a broken down jalopy, and he would charge people a quarter to take him to downtown Durham, North Carolina.
He was the first Uber.
But he was in Duke Law School, and that one day he just wanted to know what his grades were, so he broke in to the dean's office
oh my God.
of the law school to get his grades in advance.
Wow.
So maybe there's a pattern here, you know. I mean, he just didn't need to do it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I just respectfully didisagree. I don't think he cared about JFK's assassination. I really don't. He wasn't running against Lyndon Johnson.
We can discuss this another time. But I do believe he was, because of course under Eisenhower, Nixon ran Operation 40 as vice president, knew all about their extrajudicial assassination program, and I believe he wanted that as leverage.
Why would the DNC have that in their files at the Watergate? It would be in some other file, most likely. I'm not saying it didn't happen, Jason. I'm just saying this. Nixon was paranoid, and he wanted to get the dirt on McGovern, and it was a stupid move.
Yeah.
And he ruined a great presidency, because if there was anybody who was qualified to be president more than Nixon in my lifetime, I don't know of anybody. The guy, you know, was brilliant, and unfortunately he blew it. And that's, I think that the president is on the cusp of doing the same thing. And you know, I hope that we can get this thing set straight, because I do think the president's done some great things for this country. I don't want him to be impeached and convicted. And if he goes down, we go down.
Yeah,
we go
and not
down.
only that, Larry, I mean, if President Donald Trump is impeached over this matter, I really think it's a major blow to the law, the Constitution, the presidency itself. It shows that it has, you know, the people's vote and choice has no bearing. If the Washington, D.C. establishment decides they don't like who's been elected, they'll just take action like this to knock that person out of the box.
Remember, now, if it is as the Democrats framed it, that he was exerting pressure, in effect extorting Ukraine to investigate the Bidens to dig up dirt, that is impeachable. Okay, we don't know that that happened. There's no showing that that's happened. But if people believe that narrative, I mean, that's what Nixon did. He broke into the Brookings Institution too. Henry Kissinger helped him do it. Okay, so and Nixon was on the verge of being impeached and convicted. That's why he resigned. You can't use the power of the presidency to conduct political espionage on your opponents, no matter how stupid Joe Biden is. I mean, the guy is more.
Let me pause you a second. Isn't it well established that President Trump didn't say any of that? That transcript of the phone call.
That's what I'm saying. There's no showing that he did that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you see, I'm in court all the time.
Right.
Facts don't count with a lot of judges. They don't care.
Right.
You know, facts don't count, you know, in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that this thing gets twisted. I don't think the president did anything wrong. But, you know, it's become, you know, theater of the absurd, and there's no reality in Washington. The place is more than a swamp. It's more than a cesspool. I think it's one of the worst places on earth. Right?
I mean, I hear you.
When I go there, I'm depressed. I mean, I look around and, you know, it's gray skies and what goes on in Capitol Hill? Nothing of worth. It's just a game.
Well, you're right. I mean, there does seem to be a lot of time wasting anytime. I mean, something that I started doing that I had never done before was actually going to the offices of various Congress people and trying to engage with them. And I'll tell you, it's virtually impossible to get a message to anybody there. It's just a giant barrier so that these people, I mean, you look at somebody like Ocasio-Cortez, who was working as a waitress at a coffee restaurant, who now is just instant bureaucrat, Apple Watch, $5,000 clothes.
We've talked about this before. Maybe in our next show, Jason, we could show clips from The Distinguished Gentleman, okay, with Eddie Murphy.
Yep.
Okay, because that is Washington, D.C. As
T.
Woody Allen says, it's a sham of a travesty of a mockery of a sham of a travesty of a sham.
Yeah.
That's Washington, D.C. Now, yes, we need national security. We need health and welfare. But the rest of it, throw it in the Potomac.
Yeah.
And let's start over.
People in the chat are rooting for Corn Pop for 2020, so we'll see if Corn Pop reemerges and gets the Democratic. Corn Pop is somebody that Joe Biden spoke about in a pretty racist, bizarre statement during one of the debates. Larry, I know you've got only limited time tonight, so we're going to be probably a little shorter than our usual shows. I always like to remind everyone that they should visit freedomwatchusa.org. It's very important that people financially support Larry and his team at Freedom Watch. They're working on so many important cases. I mean, we look at the travesty of justice that was attempted against Dr. Corsi, Sheriff Arpaio, Judge Moore, all the different people that Larry is representing, Laura Loomer, of course. It's really important that FreedomWatchUSA.org has your support. Larry's been talking a lot also about Hillary Clinton's ridiculous statements about Tulsi Gabbard. Even if you disagree with her, she's not a Russian asset, I don't think.
She's just mad that Tulsi's better looking than she is. That's the bottom line.
Well, so Larry, I know there were a number of things you wanted to discuss, and we're getting close to the end of the time you have right now. Was there anything else that we haven't covered yet?
I don't think so. I mean, my message here is that we need to rise up peacefully, legally. You need to support Freedom Watch, and you need to disseminate your show and my radio show so the American people can be educated as to the reality of what's really going on right now. And we are in dire straits. The country is sinking. Unless we pull out of this nosedive, we're going to not have President Trump, and we're also going to be living in a Soviet-style gulag shortly.
I mean, to some extent, that's already happening, Larry. This concept of closed-door impeachment hearings, this is not any kind of court or any kind of judicial process that we would expect in the United States. You're supposed to be able to confront your accusers and have these public hearings. What's up with that? How can Schiff get away with that?
Well, because they rule a school. They play the game with the rules. But look, these hearings, closed door or open door, doesn't matter. This thing's cooked. They're going to impeach the president. There was another Woody Allen movie, Take the Money and Run. And the main character was Fielding Mellish. Right. Someone asked him why he went bad, right? Remember?
Yes.
And a woman said, well, I think it was because he made love with a horse. Okay, that was the reason. So they could accuse Trump of making love with a horse at this point and impeach him. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Now I know where you got that from.
Right.
That was Bananas. Yeah, that's a really funny...
Is that Bananas?
Woody Allen movie. Yeah, Fielding. And then he goes and becomes a dictator in Cuba or whatever fake country they develop for that.
Well, Woody Allen and I are ideologically different, obviously, but the guy is a genius. He's brilliant, and he makes points, with humor, and that's important.
Yeah. It was a funny film. I really liked Woody Allen's slapstick days before, he's gotten a little bit... Anyway, but that's an extremely funny film. So, Larry, I don't mean to rush you off, but I know you had said you only had 30 minutes with us tonight. If you have some more time, there's other things.
Let's pick it up in a little bit. Okay,
sure.
I just had eye surgery in the last few days, so
no problem.
I don't want to stare at the screen too much. I'll be okay in a couple of days. But yeah, there's a lot more, and I urge people to follow what Jason does, because Crowdsource the Truth is just that, it's the truth. And that's what we need right now.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. People have a lot of questions for you, things about Joe Biden's role in Extortion 17 and a lot of stuff that you know about, but I think we might be going down roads that would take more time.
Let's pick it up the day after tomorrow if you're free.
You got it, Larry. All right. Thanks very much for joining me tonight. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't miss More Pain just 90 minutes from now on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. patreon.com/truepundit and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Larry, thanks for joining me tonight for that quick update. We'll see you soon.
God bless. See you soon.
And thanks for watching, everybody.